Today, we'll revisit extractivism in the Dominican Republic, the process of extracting natural resources from the earth, and the direct impact it has on the health, environment, and socioeconomic reality of the communities where the practice takes place. An article written by our guest this morning details the scrupulous actions of the Barrick Gold Corporation. Quote, she writes, a mining company headquartered in Toronto, Canada, that in addition to its silver and copper mines, operates 15 gold mines in Argentina, Canada, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Dominican Republic, Ivory Coast, Mali, Papua New Guinea, Tanzania, and the United States, unquote. The Dominican Republic is home to Barrick's second most lucrative gold mine in Pueblo Viejo near Cotuí, and the company's use of cyanide to extract gold from the mines has destroyed arable land, displaced farmers, poisoned the drinking water, destroyed rivers, and killed countless numbers of people. Let's listen.
Dominican campesinos and cacao farmers are waging an uprising in the Monte Plata region of the Dominican Republic. They are battling against Barrick Gold, the largest gold mining company in the world, who seeks to expand their violent extraction of gold and other minerals from the Pueblo Viejo region into Monte Plata, where they are threatening to use the Osama River as a toxic waste dump. The Osama River sustains the life of 4 million Dominicans and feeds 12 smaller bodies of water throughout the island. Barrick Gold henchmen and Dominican police have responded to the people's demands with violence.
¿Y qué significa eso? ¿Eso significa represión? La provincia de Monte Plata es un inodoro para Barrick. No queremos actividad minera de ninguna clase en las cuencas del río Sama. Porque eso es lo que ellos quieren hacer, esa presa de cola allá arriba. Y todo el mundo sabe que la presa de cola lo único que están es desgracia. Desgracia y más desgracia. Usted que sabe, si usted se quiere morir de la sed, si usted tiene que coger el agua de los ríos envenenado para cocinar. Están gobernando para los grandes. Y los chiquitos,
Gustavo Cisneros serves on the board of Barrick Gold as chair of corporate governance. Together with his wife, Museum of Modern Art board member Patricia Phelps de Cisneros, they are significant benefactors of the Museum of Modern Art, where their art collection is housed at the Cisneros Institute. The Cisneros family continues to profit from the violence of the gold mines, while Dominican campesinos are engaged in a fight for their lives. The Cisneros family cannot sit comfortably hiding their violence behind the prestige of the museum. This June 4th at 4 p.m., Dominicans will protest at the Museum of Modern Art to call for the removal of the Cisneros family and Barrick Gold from the Dominican Republic. They will not sit comfortably in the museum while our family in the Dominican Republic are suffering. Water is more precious than gold.
That's a special clip, video produced by Decolonize This Place, which is hosting a series of demonstrations outside of MoMA. Last week, they covered the crisis in Colombia, and they amplified the case of Mumia Abu-Jamal. And on Friday, tomorrow, they will amplify this crisis in the Dominican Republic. And the root cause of it is, of course, Barrick Gold. But of special concern, to repeat some of the themes of the video, of special concern here in New York City for those who believe in justice, is the fact that the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, has close ties to Gustavo Cisneros and his wife, Patricia Phelps de Cisneros, who sit on the board of Barrick and are also affiliated and sponsoring programs at the MoMA. These New York elites form part of, quote, imperialist networks of extraction that perpetuate the human and environmental exploitation that has ravaged the Americas since 1492, unquote. Those are the words written by our guest this morning, Dr. Sandy Plácido, and she's here with us to discuss further the action that's happening tomorrow, but the crisis in the Dominican Republic. Dr. Sandy Plácido is a Dominican historian, educator, and organizer from the Bronx. She is assistant professor of history of Queens College of the City University of New York, and the inaugural Dominican Studies Research Scholar at the CUNY Dominican Studies Institute at the City College of New York. Dr. Plácido's work focuses on women, the Hispanophone Caribbean, the United States, and anti-imperialism in the 19th and 20th centuries. Dr. Sandy Plácido, welcome to A New Day.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much.
Good morning. So tell us a little bit more about the crisis in the Dominican Republic and the character of Barrick's extractivism on the island.
Okay, great. And again, yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on the show. So the situation in the Pueblo Viejo mine, so that is a mine, again, as I write in the article, that has been, there is evidence that extraction in that mine began as early as 1493. So the Spanish had already inaugurated, right, that process. But this particular mine has been under the Barrick has controlled operations of this mine along with another corporation. And I want to mention that there's a corporation called NUMA Corporation, which is actually based in the U.S., and they have about 40% of the stake in all of this. But in any case, they've run this mine for about 10 years now. And the mine in Pueblo Viejo, which is near Cotuí, is the one in question that has already contaminated communities because the volume of extraction is so high. It's close to 600,000 ounces of gold every year. And part of it is that they know that there's about 23 million ounces of gold in that one mine, and they are hell-bent on getting every single bit out. And so, of course, when you're extracting that much gold every single year over a decade, when I visited Cotuí and they have an encampment there, they've been protesting for 3 years and they have this encampment right outside it's probably like a mile outside of the entrance of the Barrick Gold mine that, people from the community are just there making coffee. They have community meetings, actions, etc. But all types of diseases, cancer, cyanide, and lead in the blood, because in the process, cyanide, sulfur, and lead is used. People smell it in the air. It's in the water. It has affected crops, the soil, and then people have died as well. So it's an ongoing issue. And then part of the struggle now, it has accelerated because when you have all this wastewater, it needs to go somewhere. So they have a huge thing called the tailings dam near Cotuí, and that has also been part of the contamination, for example, of the groundwater. But because they've been extracting so much, they want to create another dam, and this dam they want to create in another part of the country called Yamasá. And it's in this place, Yamasá, where you have the beginning of one of the largest and longest rivers in the Dominican Republic, which is the Osama River. So the people there have been fighting quite militantly. And some of the footage that you just played is from about a month ago when people were trying to prevent Barrick representatives from coming into the community, and then the police and SWAT teams and military attacked the community, shooting at them. So that's a bit of an overview.
So I'm just wondering, what does the dam have to do with the process of mining? Do the miners build dams?
Mm-hmm. So the part of it is that when you're taking and I'm not the expert on this, but my understanding as I've learned about this issue is that, you go into the mountain, into the earth, and you extract the gold, but of course the gold is going to be embedded in other pieces of rock. So in order to actually kind of separate the gold from the rest of the rock, you need to kind of pass it through different chemicals such as cyanide, sulfur, etc. And that process breaks apart the gold, but then that wastewater needs to go somewhere. So I'm not sure. My guess is that there's one set of people who build the dam, and then there's other people who mine. Some of those people probably overlap, but that's a very good question. And in either case, it's about exploiting, right, this kind of labor force in Cotuí, Yamasá. These are all municipalities and towns in the kind of interior part of the country where you're going to see a lot of people desperate, right, for work because of processes of displacement from the land that has happened, right, over the last 100 years or so. So, yeah.
And can you talk to us about the response of the government to this crisis?
So the government, so they have certainly been called out, right? Because part of it is, of course, they're the ones, who make all of this possible, right? The contracts need to be signed and approved between, right, the Dominican government and leadership, and then these external foreign corporations. So, there have been critiques part of this happened under, Leonel Fernandez's administration, and now under Abinader, right? They have certainly been the target. For example, my understanding is that there are some local elected officials who are with the people and resist, and also are challenging the building of these dams and the expansion of the mine. But of course, I think right now the reaction has been that they're just moving forward. I think there have been some, because of some of the social movements. I think in recent years there have been attempts, for example, to convince Barrick to pay more taxes, for example, or to put a little bit more money back into the community, because obviously they're making a fortune. And in previous iterations of the contract, it was quite inequitable. And so, for example, over the years, it's gotten slightly more equitable, but for the most part, Barrick, Newmont, et cetera, these people are taking most of the money with them, or most of the gold with them. So I think their response right now is much of the same, just continuing to move forward. And I think part of it is that I think one of the demands right now of the movement over there is to ask the government not to renew their contract with Barrick, because I believe their contracts are supposed to expire in the next couple of years, and then that's another push so that those contracts are not renewed again.
So there's some focus to the protests. I'm reading here, because we covered this story before, that 2006 was an important year because it was then that the company acquired the country's major mining contract. And in 2006, it planned to extract 23.4 million ounces of gold. But there was apparently an environmental assessment, and that environmental assessment essentially said that that only 500,000 ounces of gold could be extracted. And part of what you're telling us is that they're extracting 500,000 ounces of gold yearly.
Per year. Yeah, and that's something I confirmed directly on their website. So if you actually go to Barrick's website, they explain, their operations, as you mentioned, all over the world, 15 gold mines, Africa, Latin America, and then their most productive one, I learned, is actually one in Nevada, which kind of, opened my eyes and started making me think about what some of the struggles out there might be, right? If it's even more than the one in the DR, I can only imagine, right, what those communities, but yes, in any case, it's about 500,000 per year. And so absolutely, I mean, this has been, the people in the Dominican Republic have been organizing against this issue for about as long, right, as Barrick has been in the country. And I remember, yes, meeting so many incredible environmental justice advocates there, scientists, that kind of can probably give a little bit more information. But yes, the idea is that they're absolutely mining way more than they should. And it's just, it really has had, I mean, like I said, the people that I met in the community, it's this one story that always stays with me of a woman who just explained to me, I have so much lead in my blood that when I go to the doctor, they need to use like a thicker syringe, like needles, because my blood has like thickened. So that has really stuck with me. And you know, there have been other reports like people have cyanide in their blood, lead, various skin infections, etc. So, yes,
I'm also
it's
reading
certainly an issue. Mm-hmm.
That story is so important to amplify. It sounds horrifying, but you mentioned Leonel Fernandez, who's the former president of the Dominican Republic, and he's a Harvard-trained attorney, I believe, and he granted Barrick 93% of the proceeds from mining and allowed the state to retain 3%. And of course, there's an enormous amount of corruption in the Dominican Republic, with politicians taking bribes from these corporations to essentially destroy the country and its resources. Can you talk to us about the connection with MoMA? You write beautifully about these imperial networks, and part of what you say, I think, in a very effective way, is that without the consent and networks pulled together by an international elite, Barrick wouldn't be able to get away with murder in the Dominican Republic. And that nexus is found right here at the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. Talk to us about the individuals and this network that you identify.
Yeah, that's such a great question. Exactly. So part of what, as you mentioned, tomorrow, right, Strike MoMA, which is a movement that has been occurring for about 8 weeks now. They've been having these actions right across from the MoMA, which is on West 53rd Street for those interested in coming tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And so tomorrow's action, we're bringing attention to the fact that an individual named Patricia Phelps de Cisneros, her and her husband, George Cisneros, they are this couple, and their billions come from their monopoly of communications, specifically in Venezuela, because they're both like born and raised in Venezuela. So things like, I think it's Venevisión. I think they have some stake in like things like Univision, et cetera, but they're kind of, you know, conservative, right wing, you know, anti like individuals. And so in any case, George Cisneros is on the board of directors of Barrick, right? I think he's also on something called the International Advisory Board. He might have other positions, but the idea is that he's involved with Barrick because as an individual, he became a billionaire in Venezuela, or, you know, kind of is part of a dynasty of other capitalists in Venezuela. He apparently has the international expertise on like kind of business transactions, whatever. So he's in Barrick, but then his wife is this art collector since the 70s. She inherited a bunch of money because her great grandfather came from Harvard in the late 19th century, ended up in Venezuela, became a businessman. So she grew up in Caracas, and kind of became very obsessed with modern art, apparently abstract art, etc. And so starting in the 70s, she started collecting all this abstract art. So she started a collection, which is currently housed at the MoMA, named after her. And then she and her husband also started this thing called, it's named after them, an Institute for the Study of Art in Latin America. And then they also just, you know, donate, trustees, etc. And so that's the sinister part, right? So we're in the city, and I'm a Dominican born and raised in New York, right? And we know, right, if we're in New York City, the kind of grave discrepancies, right? This is one of the cities in which, the highest concentration of the 0.001%, right? Some of the richest people in the world, and yet also individuals who are the product of displacement, exploitation, from all over the world, right? And we have these grave inequalities in the city. And yeah, I think I'm really excited that the Strike MoMA movement is bringing together these struggles and saying, you know, we need to go to places like the MoMA and identify exactly this ruling elite. It's a global ruling class. It's an international, and I think it's very effective to to call them out, right? It's not just about highlighting all of the issues that we face, but also pointing out who exactly causes these issues in the first place. So my hope is that they are listening, that they are afraid, that they reconsider, right? The ways in which I think there's another individual involved with this movement who's a scholar, Macarena Gomez Paris, who she just had an article come out related to this movement. She talks about it in terms of art washing, right? It's like using the kind of abstract modern art as a shield for this literal, in that video, people were being shot at, tear gas. There's so much violence that happens in these communities, all types of bribery on the part of Barrick. They send in representatives trying to kind of bribe people to be on their side. There was just an incident of some young individuals who were invited. They thought they were just going to go to some baseball tournament or something. And when they got there, they realized Barrick was organizing it. And then they were like, no, we don't want to participate because people there are really against Barrick. And then Barrick trapped them or something. I need to watch, but apparently they trapped them and didn't let them leave. So that's the type of stuff we're talking about, where they're literally in these communities trying to force and bribe and blackmail individuals. And I'm sure if you go to the Barrick website, they don't have any description of those types of business practices, but that's essentially some of the things they're doing in the country.
You're listening to the voice of Sandy Plácido, a Dominican historian, educator, and organizer from the Bronx. Dr. Plácido is assistant professor of history at Queens College of the City University of New York and the inaugural Dominican Studies research scholar at the CUNY Dominican Studies Institute at the City College of New York. And we're talking about the actions of the Barrick Gold Corporation in the Dominican Republic, as well as its very close ties to the Museum of Modern Art right here in New York City. I'm Johanna Fernandez, your host of A New Day, and you're listening to the AI at 99.5 FM in New York. And we'd like to take calls. The number to call is 212-209-2877. Once again, 212-209-2877. Where do you fall on this conflict, and what do you think can be done? What is to be done? 212-209-2877. Once again, that number to call us and partake in this conversation is 212-209-2877. Dr. Plácido, can you talk to us again about the mine, where it's situated right here in the United States? Because it seems that there could be opportunity for connecting workers in the United States in these mines who probably are not being properly compensated and who are suffering themselves of all kinds of diseases as a result of their labor. Perhaps there's an opportunity to connect them to folks in the Dominican Republic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my dream, it would be incredible if individuals who work at Barrick mines around the world, right, there was some level of connection and solidarity, because I can only imagine. But yeah, in my brief initial research, I believe it's in a place called Carlin, Nevada, which when I looked up, is a very tiny town, not a very high population. It seemed to be, when, the photos it looks like a very kind of arid desert, like not as many people. However, of course, someone has to work in there. So whether those individuals live in kind of worker camps that are set up near the mine, whether they have to commute, those are all, I think, questions worth looking into. I can only imagine, being in Nevada, probably Latin workers, maybe folks who are of indigenous descent, or other working class individuals from that area, right? It's something that as I was doing but again, I was so surprised that after Carlin, right, it's literally, if you look at their list, it's, there you go, Pueblo Viejo, the little mine that could, right, since 1493 in Dominican Republic. But one of the things, and I have to mention this because I know the person that you interviewed last time, it's Salvi Garcia, and she's a friend and colleague, and I always want to make sure to uphold her work. She's the one who really has opened my eyes to this issue. She's an anthropologist who's been doing the research and one of the in the communities, and one of the things she kind of opened my eyes to, she's like, exactly, Sandy, one of the crazy things about this particular mine, it's that it's in a community that it's not like Harlan, right? You know, it's a densely populated like Cotuí. Like Cotuí is one of the major cities of like the Dominican Republic. So this is not a kind of middle of nowhere, like, you know, there's communities, roads, and one of the demands is that there's 400 families in particular, or maybe 450, that live so close to the mine that one of their most basic demands is that they be just moved to a safer location. It's like they're not even, you know, it's not even just like get Barrick out. Like they're still at the stage of like, can you just get us to a safer place? Because right now they're living in an area where they can't even use the water, and so they're dependent on, like, I think about 20 gallons of water is what they get weekly from
a week
Barrick per week, Barrick / local government representatives. So yeah.
We've got a number of callers, and let's take all three of them at once, and then we'll bring it back to you. Caller, okay. This is WBAI. You're on the line. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hello?
You're on the line.
Yes, hi. I do know of this speaker. I mean, you guys should have more people that are not just leftist, liberal, socialist, progressive Democrats expressing their views. I mean, it's a shame. I mean, she should go live in a socialist country if she's so much into the way they believe things should be ran.
So, caller, you agree with the company Barrick and the ways in which it's destroying the lives, the land, the air of the Dominican Republic?
I know, but they don't want nothing. But I bet you she drives a nice big car. She drives this. She lives in this and lives here and uses up all this stuff. And they're totally against the way they get.
Where do you live? Where are you calling from? Where do you live? What neighborhood do you live in?
I mean, it's just my view. You shouldn't only have people from the far left.
All right, but I'm asking you a question. Where do you live?
You know what the thing is? The reception on the radio, you sound crystal clear. On this over here, I could only make out.
All right.
40%
Thank you. Thank you so very much for calling.
I always listen to this, but I like to listen to the far left because I take it as entertaining every morning.
All right.
Well, should have different views on this.
All right. Well, you know what? 90% of media is controlled by 6 corporations, multinational capitalist corporations, and that's what 90% of the media upholds, a capitalist analysis of the world. My question to this caller is: would you like Barrick to come to your home and to your block in Manhattan or in Queens or in Brooklyn or the Bronx and do what it's doing in the Dominican Republic? We'll take 2 other callers. Caller, you're on the line. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Good morning, Johanna.
Good morning.
Morning. This is Chef here calling in, just always saying thanks for, uplifting the people and just sending, prayers and thoughts out to that individual who called before, that he may find some type of peace and understanding along his journey as we all search for. But in terms, obviously, what Barrick is doing, I think anyone would believe is an ill socially just wise, and in any other format you can think of it, the destruction of the lives, the land of people. I don't think there's any discussion as to whether that should take place or not. But it's as much as these multinational companies are, say, in a certain country mining for resources, there also needs to be like a shift on the broad population level of where, if we're not out there, these companies are going to create what the demand is, so who's to say that an ounce of gold is worth X amount of dollars, or who's to say that a 1 carat diamond is worth X amount of dollars? It's the value that we place on things as society. And it's like, how do we get those paradigms to shift where we place value on the things that, bring us more life? It's all about more life. Like people, it's sad to see people walking out of a Walmart with a big screen TV, and then they'll stop at McDonald's on the way home and get something to eat there and not nourish their bodies and our lives and our spirit physically, but we will spend all this money on material things. And we all have, our vices and flaws and things that we need to learn and grow from. So I'm not, placing blame on anyone or calling fault out, but, there definitely needs to be a paradigm shift and a priority shift on what we place value on. For example, Purdue, huge chicken company, factory farm, raised everything. But once they saw that there was a market of people wanting organic chicken or organic products, obviously they shift their business model to cater to the needs of those people, So, businesses will shift to the needs of the people because they want to keep making money. So whatever the people put out there to demand to give us more life is what these businesses will cater to. And hopefully the businesses that are catering to us are like, B corporations and co-ops such as like Bob's Red Mill and Nutiva and other great businesses out there that not are only doing it for the profit, but are doing it for the people. So as always, thank you for what you do.
Thank you. And you're the caller who calls us in your car while you're going to work.
Yeah. I'm like on my way to school right now to teach, so I'm usually like trying to catch you right before I lose service going into work.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks.
We'll take another caller. Caller, you're on the line. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
I am Eric the Red from Bronx. Let me preface my remarks by saying that modern art is anti-art and MoMA is a piece of junk. The problem is that capitalism is the cancer of society. El problema es que el capitalismo es el cáncer de la sociedad. All power to the international working class now. Todo el poder a la clase obrera internacional. Ahora.
Muchas gracias. Thank you so very much, Eric, for joining us. Eric the Red, for joining us this morning. Dr. Plácido, I'm going to bring it back to you. We've got about 2 minutes.
Okay, so then very quickly, exactly, I agree with the last caller. Capitalism is the cancer. So I don't know what that first caller was, they're so worried about socialism, communism, and yet we're living in a capitalist society where people can't pay their rent, are dying in hospitals, because they can't get health care, horrible services, horrible education, no. So all I'll say is that if anyone wants to have further conversation, then meet us tomorrow at the MoMA. Let me get to 11 West 53rd Street. Like I said, it's week 9 of Strike MoMA. We're going to be bringing awareness around this Barrick issue, the connection between Barrick and MoMA. And also, I'm just inviting specifically my Dominican community, anyone on this call. If you know a Dominican, which you probably do if you live in New York, invite them, please, tomorrow, 4 o'clock. We want our community there to let them know that we are in this city. We work for them. We clean after them. We take care of them. And the least they can do is meet us face to face, eye to eye. Let us know. Tell us in our face what you have to tell us. And we're going to show you guys how important we are to this city, to this world, because this is, it stings me, because we know the reality, we know the truth. And so yeah, I'm really excited for the opportunity to spread the word. And I have a group that we're trying to get Dominicans together, and it's called Dominicans United NYC on Instagram. So you could also find me very easily, Sandy Plácido. But yes, Joanna, thank you for this show and this platform. It's truly an incredible space. So
tell us once again where folks should meet you tomorrow at 4 p.m. for a protest against MoMA and its collaborations with Barrick.
Okay, so it's the Museum of Modern Art, which is on 11 West 53rd. I think you could take the 6th train to 53rd and just walk right over. I'm even giving you directions. It's at 4 o'clock. We're going to be out there. We're going to be, bringing up this issue. We're going to hopefully have some live music. I'll be emceeing and sharing more information with individuals, and hopefully with whoever's there, we can have these conversations, because it's really critical, right? We really need to rethink, right, the way things are set up, because clearly things are not working. And yes, people are dying unnecessarily, as the second caller said, because of greed, we know that gold is so important, right, to these international standards of currency. But when you really think about it, right, it's this sacred thing that is just being torn out of these mountains, right? And I mean, there's so many implications and metaphors you can make about the ways that our land and our people are constantly raped, right, and violated. And I just think enough is enough. So, hopefully we can have a change soon.
And that's 53rd Street off of 5th Avenue at the Museum of Modern Art. That's off of 5th Avenue, correct?
Yes, I believe so. Mm-hmm. And it's right across from the museum. There's this Strike MoMA camp that's been kind of developing there over the last 8-9 weeks. So yeah, you'll probably see us once you get there across from the museum tomorrow at 4.
All right. You've been listening to the voice of Dr. Sandy Plácido, a Dominican historian, educator, and organizer from the Bronx. Dr. Plácido is assistant professor of history at Queens College and the inaugural Dominican Studies Research Scholar at the CUNY Dominican Studies Institute at the City College of New York. Thank you so very much, Dr. Plácido, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've been listening to non-commercial, listener-funded community radio, WBAI at 99.5 FM in New York. It's 7:58 and 61 degrees in Central Park this morning, Thursday, June 3rd, 2021. We're rebuilding the world together and ushering in a new day. This show is produced by Ajamo Sankofa, Ellis Maxwell, and Marcos Maldonado Cruz. Michael G. Haskins is our board operator. We leave you with El Costo de la Vida by Juan Luis Guerra. I'm your host, Johanna Fernandez. See you next week.
El costo de la vida sube otra vez. Es lo que baja ya ni se ve. Y las habichuelas no se pueden comer. Una libra de arroz y una cuarta de café. A nadie le importa qué piensa usted. Será porque aquí no hablamos inglés.
You're listening to WBAI in New York at 99.5 FM and WBAI.org on the web. Thank you.